In this particular case, it might be your effort, right? But then what is not there, right? Because these are the things already you have discussed, right? So specific objective, right? You have a goal. So some of you have written that as a goal, right? Some of you also written that time constraint, right? So it need to have a start date or end date. Some I don't know whether some of you have written that. Obviously, one point we have to remember that has to be limit, right? Funding limit. Then consume resources. In this particular case, the sales manager is traveling, right? Money being spent, effort, time being spent of that manager of that resource. Then what is not there, right? So this is somewhere a temporary endeavor undertaken to accomplish a unique product or service, right? Unless our idea or sometimes a process also, right? Not necessarily limited to product or service. Right now, sometimes project is being carried out to create a new process, right? Or implement a new process. So that is something you have to always remember. Whenever you talk about the difference between daily operational activities or project activities, right? So what is your aim, right? So goal, some of you have written, but what is that goal? Whenever we define that goal to create a new product, service, or process, right? Always remember the term new, right? It is not a repetitive action. If I created a process how to like reach out to customers, right? That itself can be called a project. But once that is done, that is a daily operational activity is what I'm doing, right? So whatever we have written or whatever we have discussed so far have to be a specific objective goal. Specifications we'll discuss what are the different type of specifications. Time limit, that means start date, end date. Funding limits, right? Need to have a budget, so that is the cost or that is the monetary terms. Then resources, right? In terms of people, in terms of effort, in terms of equipment sometimes, right? But the one important point what is missing there, what is my that objective or what is that goal? The idea is to create a new product or service or a process, right? Otherwise it will be a daily operational activities, right? End objective is to create something new, something unique which has not happened before. So that is where the aspects of uniqueness has to come. Exact project not been done before. So if I say that I am doing this class for the first time when I'm creating this project management class structure or the syllabus, that will be a project for me. But next time when I'm taking the class, it won't be a project because it is a repetition. It has nothing uniqueness to it. Obviously, I can say that okay, I'll add some slides or I'll like kind of create some case studies. But again, that is debatable, right? Because the majority part I have done already, right? The first time I created, I'll take it as a project, right? I put some effort, I put some like my kind of knowledge or my experience creating that syllabus, right? And every year there might be slight changes in the syllabus, right? But the first time when I'm creating that, I can call it as a I took a small project to create a syllabus for project management for MBA second year students in Kids School of Management. But repetition again, generally, so again, different companies have their own specifications, how much change is required, right? Generally, if it is changes is not more than 50%, right? You'll call it as operational activities, right? If it is more than 50% change, it will be a new project. Let's say completely syllabus is completely changed next year, right? New syllabus with more than 50% change, at least in this point what I'm talking. So in that case, again, I can call I took a new project to implement changes into syllabus up to the range of maximum or more than 50%, right? So is this part clear? Why we are debating in this? Why my daily activities or a sales manager's daily activities or a HR recruiter's daily activities cannot be termed as a project? Some of you who are like, let's say, join as a HR manager, your day-to-day activities will be recruitment, selection, or the performance management, or job definition, job rotation. Those are the activities, right? But the first time somebody has done it, set up the processes, right? So that is the project. How your recruitment and selection will happen, right? The process for, let's say, Infosys or the process for TCS. Whenever the first time they would have defined, okay, This is our recruitment and selection process for software engineer 1. This is the recruitment selection process for a solution architect, right? So that itself is a project because that is unique that they have taken first time. Once the process has been set, then every year, every month, whenever requirement comes, that is a operational activities, right? So that is the uniqueness of a project, uniqueness of either a product, service, process, right? Then emergence uncertainty that we'll discuss, the risk factor. Detailed requirement may not be known in advance, right? And that is the debatable debate between different type of project models, project management models that we'll discuss in the next slide. So project manager's only role or the major part of his role is to manage the risk, manage the uncertainty. Social construction, right? Again, this can be challenged because this was the old world view, right? Right now, if I talk about a machine learning project, right? Lot of automation has happened, right? And maybe 5 years down the like kind of road, if I'm talking about a implementing a machine learning project, human involvement will be very less, right? So we have databases, automated databases, which will be collecting data every now and then. That will be processed through different data warehouses. Then there will be auto ML kind of algorithms which will be running that, and then they will be providing insights, right? So that this definition is a traditional project, let's say construction project, IT project implementation, or HR project. You are building a hospital, right? Or you are implementing ERP, or you are doing something new. Let's say your performance management system is 180-degree, you are changing into 360-degree, right? So all these, there will be kind of involvement of resources, humans, right? And so that is where the complexity increases, right? But it is not true that it always will need humans, right? There will be projects in future which might not need, or the human involvement will be gradually less. Then integrating, right? After the risk management, second aspect of a project manager or the role of a project manager will be integrating all those activities, right? It is not that they are working in silos. All these things need to be integrated. Then temporary team finishes when project finishes. That means, so it is not that the project team is always working that project. Let's say there is a project to implement a new software or a new management process in a company. For that 6 months or 9 months, that team, which let's say 15 or 20 resources who will be working in there, right? So they are part of that team. They will be reporting to project manager. Once that project finishes, team dissolves, right? They'll move on to new projects, right? So that is the meaning of that is a temporary activity, temporary team activity. Then mission focus, right? Delivers benefits. That is where we talked about. That should be end goal in mind, either a product, service, or a process. Anything new, right? Any doubt or any questions on this slide? Okay. So now talk about the constraints, right? So these are the 6 areas which we're going to discuss throughout the course, right? Starting with scope, then we'll move into schedule, then budgeting, then resource management, then risk management, then at the towards the end we'll discuss about the quality, right? But then again there are other kind of areas also, other constraints also. Project manage, procurement, project procurement is one area, stakeholder is one area. In today's world, IT management project, any project being implemented, there will be certain components of IT resources. That itself is a separate area which is emerging. But our main focus will be in these 6 key areas. Out of that, if you see, there is something called a triangle, project triangle, or project constraint triangle. Sometimes people call it as a project golden triangle. What does it mean? Think about in this way. Let us take an example and try to understand. L&T got a project to build a highway, or let's say build a bridge from point A to point B, and all the specifications have been defined. So that is the scope. So that is the first thing which has to happen. Then once you define the scope, there will be certain constraints on quality, cost, and schedule. Because once I define my scope, okay, this is the bridge length, this is the capacity of the bridge. That means how much tonnage that bridge should hold or bridge should carry. Then, in case of emergency, right? Let's say, or in case of natural calamities, right? How much factor of safety I should have that for the bridge, right? So like that, I'll put lot of specifications. So in that will be defined in my scope statement, right? Statement of work or project scope statement. Part of that will be quality parameters, right? So what kind of material you'll be using, right? What kind of testing will be done, right? So those will be the quality parameters. Then obviously to build this bridge, L&T will estimate something, right? So okay, to build this 4 kilometer bridge, we'll need 20 crores. Our tender estimate is 20 crores of rupees, and they'll give a breakup. This is the material cost, this is the resource cost, this is the equipment cost, like that they'll give the breakup. Then obviously there will be a schedule. Let's say COVID is happening, so they'll estimate and they'll take that as a kind of a buffer also. Say that okay, we right now getting resources is difficult. We'll start the work maybe in March or April. Then from that on, these are the specific activities, and we'll complete let's say this by next 2023 April or 2024 April, right? So that is the schedule part, right? We will discuss in detail how to create a schedule, how to create work breakdown structure, all those things later on. But why this is a constraint triangle or golden triangle? What happens once I have my scope defined, scope fixed? Let's say there is a problem with schedule. That means schedule slippage is there. The like L&T or the company which has taken the contract, they are not able to complete whatever they promised during that time, right? So now the project manager knows that there is a slippage, right? So now what they have to think, which other to manage the scope to complete the whatever requirement, which are the other things they can play with, because these are the three things need to be balanced. So when I say my schedule is slipping, that means I am falling behind. I might have to look into cost, whether I'll put certain additional resources, additional equipment. So when I think of that, my cost will increase because due to delay in project, I have to, and to meet the schedule. Right now, what I have to do, I have to put more budget, put more money. So that is where cost will increase, right? Or I may think like that. Okay, my schedule has slipped. Already you have done 2 or 3 tests. Let us not do the intermediate test. Finally, you will do a final test. In between, whatever 2 tests are there, because those itself are taking 15 days each, will not do those tests, right? So we are compromising on quality to meet the schedule, right? Or let's say in other way around. So there is certain quality problem right now in the first test when building bridge is happening. After 2 or 3 months, when they carry out the preliminary test, there is a failure. Now what will happen? Now you know that you have to do certain additional things. Your schedule will suffer because it will take additional more days. Your cost might also suffer because if the material or there is a problem with equipment or there is problem with material, accordingly you have to again procure them and you have to put those new materials or new equipment. Talk about cost. Let's say everything is going well, but L&T manager right now they realized, Arey, we have already spent 15 crore or 16 crore rupees. It is only completed 30 or 40 percentage. We had budgeted only 20 crore. Now what will happen? They do not have money to pay out to resources. Schedule may slip, or they might compromise with quality, saying that we do not have much more money to put on test, right? So like that, if you see, you take any project, right? Once you have defined the scope, right? These three things comes into picture and they're all related. Once there is a slippage or a problem happens with any of the one parameter, right? Other things will get impacted. So that is why it is known as a project constraint triangle or project golden triangle. So this was the beginning. This was the like maybe 90s, 80s or 90s. This concept evolved. Later on, they have included your resources also and risk also, right? Sometimes what might happen that there might be a problem with resources also. Most of the IT projects have that kind of problem. Suddenly, what will happen? The Java engineers or the Java software developers who are working, they leave the project. They have left the company itself. So right now you have a shortage of resource. Everything was going well. Right now you have a shortage of resources. To meet those kind of to bring those resources, you might have to spend more, or your schedule might get delayed, or you did not get those kind of quality resources. Your quality of whatever software development will decrease, right? So that is one thing additionally which right now we are also looking to. Last thing is risk. Risk is basically sometimes what happens, your project manager's capability will be decided by how well he is managing risk. And that is why you need certain experience, because that is only your job, because you are not going to write the codes or you are not going to develop a software or develop a product. You do not have idea about how a plant operates or how manufacturing assembly line operates. Only thing what your kind of caliber or expertise comes into, whether you are able to kind of like kind of anticipate risks, put your contingency plans and mitigate those risks whenever those risks happens, right? And that is something, if you miss out certain risks, suddenly you did not realize, okay, rainy season, there won't be it will be impossible to kind of work out in the rainy season, because river will be flooded and will not able to build the bridge during that time. So what kind of actions, what kind of contingency plans you have for that? Let's say you are not aware of the weather pattern here and you did not anticipate that, then everything will be like kind of your quality of the project will decrease, your cost will decrease, sorry, cost will increase and schedule will increase, and your scope will get hampered, right? There is something called scope slippage, cost slippage, schedule slippage. We'll discuss that later on. But the point which is being conveyed in this slide is all these things are related. All these constant, whenever we talk about initially these three plus one scope is four, then added to that is resources and risk. All these six constraints are connected to each other. Any problem with any one constraint will hamper or will impact other five constraints, right? And as a project manager, your only work is to make sure that the impact is less or impact is managed, right? And any questions or any doubt on this?
Sir, in this case,
Yeah.
this project constraint, like if we remove this cost part,
Hmm.
can't we say project is complete? Like I meant to say, can't we do a certain project without cost?
Cost not necessarily monetary, right? Cost can be your employee effort also, right? Let's
Okay.
say there is a patent development, right? So patent development, it is a mostly it is kind of the idea or the knowledge, right? Or sometimes you are changing a process, right? Not necessarily you are spending a lot of money in that. It can be a project also. Let's say there is a in most of the companies, the HR managers ask for any kind of improvement you want to look into, or any change you want to bring out in this company, right? That can be for a temporary for 1 month or 2 months. That can be also project, right? So their employees are doing those brainstorming, putting their effort, right? So cost
Okay.
not necessarily it is always on money. Cost can be in terms of effort also.
Time also.
Yes, effort,
Time.
time. Yes, yes.
Sir, in the six constraints, out
Yeah,
of six, five are actually the input into the project, but quality that can be determined only through the output, right? So how come it becomes a constraint in the project management, sir?
correct. So there are two different things. One is product quality, second is project quality, right? And we'll discuss when we discussed about different quality assurance or quality control methods. The difference is whenever we talk about, let's say you are developing the iPhone, right? First time you're developing that product development process. So it would have been defined, okay, we need a phone with these specifications. This should have a battery, whatever specification, and it should be quality parameters also defined. it should have a like kind of these components should like kind of have a warranty of this many months, stress test, different type of tests they'll be doing, right? So that is the product quality. Whenever we talk about project quality is a kind of a product quality is a part of project quality. Project quality takes care of how well you manage the project, how well you manage the schedule, how well you manage the resources, how well you manage the time as a project manager, right? And that parameter need to be defined. How whether your stakeholders were happy or not, right? So for example, let's say this product development process is going on, right? For any software development or for any, let's say there is a HR process implementation project, right? So as a project manager, your project quality also will cover how frequently you meet the stakeholders, how frequently you had conveyed whatever information need to be conveyed. Let's say you did not do like inform those directors or general managers, though your like implementation worked fine, but that itself did not work. Your communication did not work well. So to answer your question, like here when we talk about quality, quality is not only the product quality. So product quality is a part of scope, but we are talking about the project quality also. How well all these things were managed. Sometimes what happens in software projects, because due to workload, like project was completed in time, project was quality was also good, product quality, the software quality was good. But now what happens? Your employees are unhappy. Suddenly after your project completion, 30% of the employees leave, right? That itself is a like kind of problem with your project quality, right? And that need to be taken care in the beginning. How well you are going to manage the project quality. In this particular case, let's say whenever we have this kind of resources are not there, let's say software Java developers leave, so there is a resource constraint. Now project manager what will do? Let's say there are only 5 or 6 developers. What they'll do? No, we have to anyhow finish the project. You have to work now right now in 12-hour schedule. Earlier you used to work in 8 or 9 hours. Every day now over time 3 or 4 hours additional work you have to do. So you force those software developers to complete the software. So schedule was met, cost was also met, but the quality of the project will hamper. Product quality met, software product, whatever you developed, the product was good quality, because within the existing team you are able to kind of you ask them to do overwork, do overtime, and they were able to do that. But now they are unhappy. Some of them leave after the project, they leave the company. So that itself is defined by your project quality. Product quality is a part of project quality. Was I clear on the definition?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So this is something important, and later on when we discuss about the scope, we'll discuss. So how generally you will define like because see any project starts with a requirement from user, right? Most of the times, right? So whenever there is a whether it is an internal user or a external user, right? External user means maybe our customers, right? So they will not get into the project technical description, right? Let's say government of Odisha wants to build a bridge, right? So their aim is to connect few villages, or let's say make life simpler or easier for those villagers, right? So that is the user requirement. Point A to point B, a bridge needs to be established of 4.5 kilometers, right? So that is a user requirement. Or let's say I want to develop or I want to buy a electric vehicle, electric car, right? So vehicle must, so that is my requirement. I'm not looking into which kind of engines you are going to use or which kind of battery you are going to use, which kind of turbocharger you are going to use, right? So any project start with a user requirement. Again, user can be internal also. Let's say you are doing some HR project for employees or IT implementation project for organization. So users can be internal employees also, or sometimes or most of the times it is outside your customers, right? So that is your user requirement. As a product manager, your role will be to define your user requirement or convert your user requirement to system requirement, right? So what will be in the system requirement? Let's say if I take this user requirement that the vehicle should accelerate from 0 to 60 kilometer within few seconds and it should carry 6 or 4 people, right? Then what are the features, right? What are the system requirement? Vehicle size, weight, engine, horsepower, kind of transmission. So that is something which product manager need to have the grasp on, right? So because sometimes the question being asked is what is the difference between a product manager and a project manager or program manager? These set of activities generally being done by the product manager or business owner if it is a software development project. So now what happens, the product manager have these kind of specifications or the requirement, not specification, these are the requirement. So we'll just take this first example because these are different examples. House, that is if it is a construction project, right? House must accommodate a family of four, then number and size of rooms, a luxurious or a modern apartment, what kind of material, what kind of decorative items that need to be defined. Then what happens? That is what you bring is that is user requirement or system requirement that is known generally is because it is from the market, right? You do a market research or you even not market research if it is your internal, some employees need to, some things need to be done, right? So that is itself known as a MRD or market requirements document, right? Once you have market requirement documents, this product requirement document is being done by your product manager, right? So this is like what we discussed. Let's say your this spacecraft, right? It should reach a height of 100 kilometers, right? It should orbit over Earth at a 100 kilometers radius. What are the specific requirement for different engines, different motors, everything need to be defined. Once the product manager comes up with a product requirement document, then both product manager and program or project manager, right, we'll discuss that with the subject matter experts because different modules will be there, right? Different components will be there. For each component, there will be experts, there will be engineers, there will be developers if it is a software project, right? And they will define the product design document, what exactly need to be developed. So when I say that the spacecraft need to reach at a 100 kilometers radius, right? It should orbit Earth at a radius of 100 kilometers. System requirement, it will be generic. Motor must provide enough thrust. It should burn long enough, all those things. Now the subject matter expert, who is the propulsion module or whoever is going to design that propulsion module for let's say SpaceX or NASA or ISRO, right? They'll tell that what exactly need to be done, right? So this is very specific, and this is something which will decide how much time the project will take, how much cost the project will take, right? What kind of quality assurance we can build into the project, right? What kind of resources we need, what kind of risk can be there, whether we have that kind of technology or not, right? And that is something which will be decided by, not decided, basically discussed and agreed upon by product manager, project manager, and the team members. Team members, when I say specific experts for those modules, right? So this is a complex arrangement. Just imagine like a SpaceX, how many modules, how many components will be there. As a program manager, so somebody will be program managing, under him there will be a lot of project managers. So each project manager will be handling maybe 50, 100 or 200 different cross functionality, and they will be trying to link that, okay, these are the specific requirement and these are the challenges. This is the time it will take to develop. This is the cost it will take, right? So remember what we discussed in this previous slide. It is a complex arrangement of resources, machines, equipment, effort, right? And as a project manager or program manager, your role is to manage those risks and integrate them all together because they cannot work in silos. Somebody is developing a launch module and somebody is developing a propulsion module and they are not fitting. And you'll see like I'll show you some like kind of big project failure due to this kind of integration did not happen. Somebody has developed something and there are like kind of it is not only about, there are a lot many silly kind of mistakes in Euro. I forgot their Euro spaceship agency. That basically Europe's space agency. So one of the module was developed by USA team, right? So they were trying to launch to Moon or Mars that time, few years back. So different modules being developed across different countries. So remember that we use a metric system and USA have a different inch system, right? And that small mistake was not captured in the beginning in the scope document. So when the document has gone, the designer or the developer who are developing that module, they developed in the inch. Actually, it should be in the semis or whatever the like kind of definition, measurement definition has to be there. So to see the complexity and see the simplest mistake which could have been avoided. The module need to be developed or the length or the dimensions were supposed to be in centimeters or whatever different dimension, because it went and that module was being developed by USA team. They take that whatever measurement in inches and develop that. And you can think of like kind of they are such a big agency, this should not have happened, but these are the generic thing happens. These are the small things which towards the end will cost you like kind of lot many rupees. Same thing recently happened. I think Japan or some country bought Euro rail. No, I think from Japan they imported, and the rail gauge, the like kind of the metro which will move on those rails, that was a different kind of arrangement or different width. So they have already spent, I think, few millions of rupees in that project, developing in that line so that whenever they procure that rails, it can be operated. Now, what has happened? The width on which it will operate, that is not correct. So most of the times project fail because there is an integration issue. Whenever the complexity of project increases, different teams will be working in different modules and the communication or the integration won't happen, right? And that is where this documentation, right? The scope documentation, which will take care of market requirement, because the product manager will come later and say, Array, I had told you that you did not develop. So this is the only document which will save the project manager. Why I'm telling you that? Because this is something and 100% all of you one way or other in future you will be carrying out, maybe for a temporary role as a project manager. Remember that documentation is very important and you have to keep this documentation ready. Whenever somebody is assigning you a project, make sure that the whatever their requirement is listed, they have agreed upon that, so that later on they cannot come back and say that, okay, I had asked you to do that, you did not do that. Most of the problems in project will happen due to that. The requirement stage, whenever you are gathering those requirements, customer later on might say that, okay, I did not ask you that, or they might say that, okay, I had asked you that, you did not develop that. So that is why this documentation part, right? 90% of your time as a project manager will get into communication documentation, because this is the risk. Because if it is not cleared and everybody has not agreed upon, these kind of mistakes will happen, right? And any questions on this? MRD, PRD, PDD. Again, like the different company use different names, but these are the standard terminology. Like sometimes they'll be using a system design document, right, or a requirement checklist. So different names, but again, like most of the companies generally use MRD, PRD, and PDD. And any questions on this? So we start with a market research or market requirement document that will get converted into a product requirement document. To meet this market requirement, what kind of product service need to be designed, right? Or a process need to be designed. So, and for each of this product service, what are the design, like what need to be designed, right? So that will become your product design document. To design that system, to design that product, what need exactly need to be developed, right? So that will give rise to your product design document. Any questions on this? Okay, So again, this part will like the next 4 to 5 sessions will repeatedly discuss this. So the idea is again, this is one type of project process. We'll discuss different type of project process. We start with the initiation or definition phase, move into planning phase, then implementation phase, then deployment phase, then closing phase, right? Again, depending upon some project, some part will be missing or some stage phase won't be there. Remember this, whenever you take a project, always you need to have a closing phase. Most of the project, if you like in any company you join, this part won't be there. If you ask for a project closure document, project landing document, it won't be there, because what happens, every like project will be like very kind of end moment, just in time delivery, right? Towards the end of the project, everybody will be running here and there, trying to complete all their tasks, and just deployment. Once deployment is done, team will get the result and team will go to different like their original locations. So nobody care about this phase, closing phase. But as a project manager, you have to remember this is your most important thing. What did you learn? What were the misses? What was agreed upon in the beginning and what was delivered to the customer? So this whole documentation or whole kind of management process, you have to like kind of take care of that. If it is not there, later on what will happen? Customer will come back and say that, okay, where is your project closure document? Most of the government project, right? And not only government project, big kind of private project also, right? So there is a clause called retention money. So what it means, let's say L&T takes a highway project of 1,000 crores worth from Odisha government, NH5 or NH1 or whichever NH they're building for state highway, and the total worth of the project is 1,000 crores. So generally there is a clause called retention money clause. So 10% of the money will be paid only after 18 or 24 months of completion of delivery of the project, not completion. Let's say the highway is completed, delivered to the government, national highway authority or state government if it is a state highway. Of day of the delivery of the project, because that is the end product, right? That 20 kilometers or 25 kilometers worth of road, whatever has been constructed. Once that has been delivered, right? From that day to 18 months or 24 months. So basically till that point of time, 900 crores of rupees L&T might have been paid. 100 crores will be kept with government as a bank guarantee and will be given after 18 or 24 months once these guys submit the project closure document that everything is okay, everything has been agreed upon. Whoever has to sign, they have signed it. And once you submit those project closure document after 18 months or 24 months, whatever has been written in that document, right? Then that 100 crores will be released. So for any government project or any kind of this kind of clause is there, right? Make sure that in case you are involved in those things, make sure that you are preparing your project closure document perfectly, because they will try to find a kind of a chance to not give that money. Okay, this is not there, that is not that, and will be running behind. So because most of the times what happens, once project is deployed, project is over, everybody is usually running around, right? Running back to their locations. This is something which is very important. Second part which this slide talks about is something called front end loading, right? So that means your most of your effort should be in the beginning itself, right? Why it is that? Because once your scope is robustly designed, what exactly you need to do to build a spaceship or to build a highway or to build a railway track or to build a hospital, if in the beginning itself I put 3 months, 6 months or 9 months to define scope in detail, and I plan to stick to that, right? Later on execution of project will be easy. But if I do not put sufficient time, so I do not put a lot of load, lot of effort in the front end in the beginning, what will happen towards the execution? Whenever we have started executing, sometimes the owner will come or the customer will come, I had told you to include this scope, or there is a problem with some villagers, they are not like kind of giving the permits, right? So everything need to be thought of or planned in the beginning itself, so that the challenges are less towards the end. And that is the meaning of front-end loading. Front-end loading includes robust planning design early in the project life cycle. So that is the front end, right? Beginning part of the project. At a time when the ability to influence changes in design is relatively high and the cost to make those changes is relatively low, right? Because any changes you make, you have not built the road, you have not started construction. If any changes in plan, it is just a changes in digital print, right? Or a paper print. Everything can be done. You need some additional permit, that can be done. But you have constructed, you have not taken that permit. Government will fine, you will get into a legal battle, you will get into a court case, right? So that is where always focus on the front end. That means putting lot of effort, putting lot of manpower, thinking about planning in the beginning itself rather than at the end loading, right? So most of the project fail due to that scenario. So they start the project, okay, thinking that okay, whenever whatever problems comes, we'll handle that later. We are falling behind the schedule. Let us start the project, right? But that is something you have to remember. It is very difficult to make any changes once you start building a product, whether it is a road, whether it is a building, or whether itself is a like kind of any kind of product, process, or service. If you have started building a website and you have already going to launch, and somebody comes and says that okay, we have not included this, changing those codes is very difficult. But in the beginning itself, you have taken care of it, then it will be done easily, right? Any questions on this? So this basically shows the like cost is sort of cost of making changes increases once your project progresses, right? So cost of making changes is increasing exponentially. In the beginning phase, it will cost less to make any changes. Towards the end, it is very costly. And
Sir,
ability, yeah, go on.
in the deployment phase, sir, can we consider the delivery of the final project?
Yes, that is
This
the
include
deployment.
all the, sir, then in the delivery phase only we have decide all the cost which is associated with the project, or in a closing phase?
Delivery means
Means, sir, suppose if I'm completed my project and I want to deliver to the client, at
Hmm.
that phase I have to complete the cost structure sheet also to give the client for the final payments and all. So in the deployment phase only I have to represent the that sheet in front of a client, or in a closing phase?
if it is a outside client, obviously, unless you like it is all obviously it will be like kind of a not a lump sum payment, stage wise payment. So you'll get whenever you prepare the plan, you'll get 10 to 20%. When you start implementing, so there will be stages every 3 months or 6 months, depending upon the milestones, you'll be getting paid. So it is not that you will prepare the cost sheet towards the end. You have already prepared and maintaining that. So let's say L&T starts the bridge. Every 3 months, they'll go to Odisha government or National Highway Authority telling that this is the cost we have already borne. So please kind of complete the bills, or please release the bills, right? So that documentation is always in the preparation. But what happens towards the end, once you have like let's say highway is completed, so your final cost also settled, final cost was also prepared and say that okay, we spent around 1920 crores of rupees, right? So that is the deployment and project has been handed over. But now what happens, there will be few documentation left: environment clearance, municipality clearance, let's say there is a handover to toll gate authority, that clearance, right? And then ministry level some clearance might be pending, so that will be part of your closure document. That unless you send that or unless you finish that, so your some part of your money will be pending with the government.
Yes,
So
sir.
okay, so to answer your question, the cost structure or the cost sheet is being maintained from the beginning. It is not that we'll start preparing here from the initiation phase itself. Once a project manager gets into that role, he'll be maintaining that sheet, so every 2 or 3 months, so that your bills are getting cleared.
Yes, sir.
So now the important part, there are two major philosophies of project management. One is waterfall, second is agile, right? most of you, if you are looking into this kind of job opportunities in today's world, most of the software companies, and they'll be writing one word, aware of agile methodologies, or aware of Scrum, aware of lean project management, right? So all this part of agile methodology. Waterfall is the traditional method. So whenever you talk about building bridges, hospitals, construction project, infrastructure projects, spaceships, any kind of innovation projects, right? So traditionally, that is a waterfall model. Agile is the new age philosophy, project philosophy. That is agile, as you know, that word meaning is speed, right? You are very like flexible to move very quickly, right? So that is mostly for the software projects. So if you go into internet and search in Google, right, a lot of people have a lot of discussion saying that agile is better than waterfall. That is not true. Depending upon the project, right? If it is infrastructure project, if it is like kind of something like spaceship or like building, waterfall models actually works better. But yes, software projects, software like kind of software product development, agile methods are much more preferable. Then what is the difference? So whatever we discussed so far, right? So what we discussed, front end loading, right? Your requirement should be in the beginning should be decided. So that is the philosophy of waterfall. That means whatever you are going to construct, whatever you are going to design, whatever you are going to build, all this should be solid. All this should be kind of requirement are robust, and you have already decided, right? And that is listed and that is documented properly. Let's say I want to build a bridge from point A to B. What is the length? What kind of material will be used? What kind of loading arrangement? Everything need to be decided in the beginning, because later on when I start building bridges, making changes will be costly. So that is the philosophy of waterfall model. So we start with the requirement. Unless I finalize my requirement, no work will start. Once I finish my requirement towards the end, design work will start. Once my design work has been completed, development work will start, right? Let's say the highway construction, right? So what is the requirement from the customer, Odisha government or central government? That requirement need to be documented in a tender document, and it is given to be L&T, right? And that need to be very detailed one. Later on, government cannot come and say that, okay, I want to make those changes, right? Again, they can do that, but there are other things too. There is a change management process. We'll discuss that. But ideally, requirement need to be finalized in the beginning. Then only the design of bridge will start. How many trusses, what kind of columns, what kind of piling, everything need to be designed, right, on paper. Then the execution development phase, then testing, then the final bridge deployment or handing over. But think about a software project, website development. There is a small company in Odisha, they want to develop a website, right? It will be very difficult that, okay, they'll write everything, right? Okay, how many customers every day will be visiting my website? What kind of call to action button I'll put, or what kind of database I'll keep, what kind of marketing automation I'll keep. It is very difficult, right? To like, because those requirement will keep changing, right? By the time you develop the website, right now only 100 customers are visiting that website. By the end of the year, 10,000 customers are visiting. That requirement itself is changing, because how many customers are using that website, that will accordingly you have to take those servers, right? Otherwise your website cannot handle those loads. So the point is, in those kind of requirement where you know that requirement cannot be finalized in the beginning, right? Requirement is fluid, requirements will keep changing, right? It is better to take agile. So if some of you remember in B2B and MSO, we discussed something called minimum viable product, right? Minimum viable product, minimum viable service, or minimum viable experience. So that concept itself is a part of agile philosophy. That means we'll never know the final product. It is difficult to imagine a final product. Start with the minimum requirement right now and develop that product. So that is the first iteration. So your requirement, minimum requirements are defined. then design, develop, tested, then deploy. Then look into how many customers have increased or whether there are any problems in the website. Then accordingly develop the next iteration. So in each iteration, that is a incremental improvement, right? So right now, if I want to build a kind of a, let's say, electric vehicle, so I cannot say that, okay, customers are requiring the in one charge it should go for 500 kilometers. I do not have that kind of technology. So what will I do? I'll implement a agile method. So I'll develop whatever is available right now, 250 or 300 kilometer in one charge, and incrementally iteration will happen. So next year when the product is launched, the technology has been evolved, or let's say a foreign company have that kind of technology, they have developed a new technology. So I'll implement or integrate that. So that will be second iteration. So like that, I'm keep modifying my product or I keep modifying my service, right? So it is a incremental process. When I know that my requirement itself in the beginning either cannot be defined or if it is defined cannot be met. I do not have the technological capacity, right? So in either way, whatever can be done, minimum viable product, will develop that and we keep iterating or incrementing on that. So that is the known as agile philosophy, right? Then agile have different kind of project management methodologies. Scrum is one, then Kanban, then there is something called extreme programming, right? So we'll talk about that later on towards the end of our session. But remember the philosophy, waterfall, your requirement is in the beginning finalized. Agile requirements are fluid, right? Requirements keep changing. Then again, the management itself are different. Any questions on this? So agile, the advantages, you can make constant iterations. That means the customer or the user, depending upon the requirement, whichever they want to change, right? They can keep changing. Projects are broken down into smaller tasks, therefore you can prioritize your assignment from vital to secondary, right? So this is something which is very essential in agile. What needs to be done in the beginning? Because that will define your minimum viable product, right? This is something we can do it within next 1 month. So hanging fruits, right? Whichever the we can take those fruits which are in the closer to the ground. Later take that. Then later on, whenever we have expertise, capacity, right, we'll include those things. Any kind of, if some of you have built those e-commerce website, it is very easy to build right now. There are a lot many kind of website where you can just click and build those website. The easier thing is to develop this base structure, right? So grocery cart, adding products and all those things. So that itself need to be done in the beginning. Integrating payment, because for integrating payment, you need to have a kind of a sign in with either Visa, MasterCard, different banks, or Google Pay, UPI payment system. That will take time. So that you can keep towards the end, right? Because you know that it will take time. You need to have a lot of discussions. You need to have that kind of network. But at least in the beginning, rather than sitting idle waiting for to get those kind of approvals, you can start with the website development, building those addition of product, addition of your whatever website you are going to build. So that is the one example of agile. Because there will be always some tasks which cannot be done currently, and that is you have to define which task, which are the things we can do it right now. Choose those tasks, define and deliver those tasks. Face-to-face interaction enables you to bring everybody on the same page. Most of the time, there is something called a co-location, right? Agile projects, generally, team members are located. Obviously, right now, due to COVID, most of the software teams are working virtually. But general idea is that they'll be located in a single place. Waterfall, the advantages, everything is mapped out before you start working. That is where I said that requirement is finalized or frozen in the beginning. Waterfall is pretty easy to understand. You can manage your project effortlessly, move forward without facing any hurdles. Because if once you decide on requirement and you know that you have the technical expertise to deliver that, then risks will be less. right? You know that exactly what need to be done, and accordingly you are following. The processes are made to be simple and straightforward, because exactly let's say 100 activities or 200 or 500 activities need to be carried out. Who will do what, by what time it will be done, right? Everything you put on the project management software, and you just work, your only work is to manage that scheduling, right? And see that there are no slippage. But in Agile, what will happen? Okay, customer requirement, suddenly when your sprint meeting is happening, next week customer will come and say that, okay, this is the new requirement. And now you have to look into who is capable of doing this. That won't happen in Waterfall. Waterfall, requirement has been defined in the beginning, resources has been identified. But in Agile, it might happen that every 2 weeks you might have to look for resources who can actually do those kind of activities, right? Then obviously, Agile, what are the problems? There is lack of documentation, right? Because the requirement itself is not in the defined in the beginning. You might have a single page or 2 or 3 pages. Waterfall, lot of documentation. Whether you take it as advantage, disadvantage, waterfall means each step you are managing those documents. Team commitment is absolutely essential. If your team is not, so this is something regarding your Scrum. So sometimes people talk about Scrum methodology. So Scrum is not a methodology. Scrum is kind of a philosophy. So the main difference between this waterfall model and agile model is, waterfall model, there is a project manager or program manager. The cross-functional team is reporting to him. So he can say that you did not do the work and I'll take a action against you. But in agile, that won't work like that. So there is no specific project manager. There is a scrum master who only manages the processes. You are not reporting to anyone. Everybody is in the equal stand. Only thing is that philosophy which is binding you, that by the end of the project you are going to develop a product, right? So it is a lot about that group dynamics as a team, whether you are able to achieve those. So most of the agile projects fall not due to kind of processes or technologies. It falls due to that group dynamics is not there between peoples. The software developers or the these testers, there will be a fight. Sometimes some persons will claim that, okay, I am doing so much work, other people are not doing their part, right? So if those things creep in, then projects will definitely fail. Then every member of the team need to be highly experienced in what they're doing, right? Because sir, there is no supervision, right? So you need to know everything for that field, so that you can say that whichever requirement come, I can develop that. Because there is not a project manager whom you will go and say that, okay, I do not know this, whom should I contact? You are the only expert in that team. So waterfall, the problems, risks, you cannot make any changes. But like I said, most of the project, if you see, there will be always a change. Later on, customer will say and say, come and say that, okay, we need to make those changes. And that time it becomes very costly because you have already built the product. It usually takes a couple of months for the client to start seeing the result, right? Because here we are looking at the final product. You give me the requirement, I'll develop a electric vehicle which will go 500 kilometers. So you'll see that result after 2 years or 3 years, right? But in if I develop that in agile model, okay, next 6 months I'll develop a electric vehicle prototype which will be running 300 kilometers. Then 1 year after that, I'll give you an electric vehicle which will run 400 kilometers. Then 1 year after that, that means 2.5 years from now, you'll get your final product which will run at 500 kilometers per charge. So that will be agile methodology. If you need to make immediate changes, the cost of doing that will be enormously high. Obviously, that what we have discussed, any changes in waterfall model towards the end, right? It will be like kind of very high cost, right? So we'll stop here for today. Any last questions before I close the session? Again, repeating, please keep your names with group members to Chirag. Chirag will consolidate and give me the details by next Monday, that is 27th. And group members, each group need to have 5 members. And any last question? Okay, so
Sir,
if not,
along with the slides, can you provide any reading materials so that we can read about the topics in details?
I will not receive the books. I think you'll receive the books maybe next week or 1 week after.
No, sir, we haven't received yet.
Yeah, I think there was a challenge with the existing publisher. They are sending you a Indian author book. Hopefully, you'll receive by not this week, maybe by next week. I'll try to share some documents. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Hello. Bye bye.